Uh-huh. So today we have Dr. Christine Traxler from Minnesota. She's a retired physician, and she has a very interesting healing story about dysautonomia that she suffered of, and she cured herself. So thank you for coming, Christine, and for sharing your story. May I ask how it all started? What was the onset of this, and what is actually dysautonomia?
Dysautonomia is a complex set of diseases of the nervous system that affect probably more people than they know. It affects you the way your heart beats. It affects how your GI tract moves food through. It affects your blood pressure, how your bladder works, how your sweating processes work. So it's a lot of different things that together don't seem related, but they are all related to the nervous system's ability to do what your body needs to do when you're not thinking about it. I mean, obviously, if you feel nervous or anxious or something, you can feel your heart racing, but that is your brain and mind interacting with your sympathetic nervous system to activate it. So when you feel relaxed and calm and your heart rate is low, that is not you, but it's your autonomic nervous system seeing that there's no danger and therefore settling down your heart rate. And
so would you say that the two branches of the autonomous nervous system didn't work harmoniously in your case, in the dysautonomia?
Yes,
So
yes.
is it actually a dominance of the sympathetic branch?
No, in some cases it can be, but in my case it was not.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of a mixed picture. Certain parts were more of a sympathetic problem, but I would have problems almost with the parasympathetic nervous system just overtaking. So there were times when my actual blood pressure and heart rate were too low to support me being upright and functioning.
Yeah, you're probably right. Many people might have this and don't name it like this. They don't know what they have.
They don't know, and even doctors who do know how it works are still struggling with trying to figure out all the different parts of it, and a lot of people have a mixed bag where you think, well, yes, it's my sympathetic nervous system in one part of your body, but then in another part of your body, it's the parasympathetic nervous system that has become overreactive, and it can switch back and forth. So it's very it's incredible mixture of things that you just aren't really completely aware of.
So it is mysterious and an enigma to the patient. What is happening? So what were your symptoms back then?
Well, I first started probably 8 years ago or so, and I was quite a bit overweight, and I started to lose weight, and I just felt I would eat breakfast and then I felt, oh, well, I'm not hungry, so I wouldn't eat the rest of the day. And over time I started losing more and more weight, not really realizing it. I mean, I had some just maybe unpleasantness and fullness in my belly, but it wasn't like anything, concerning, until like more than 100 pounds later, I was getting thinner and thinner. Oh. And then I went through a period of time where I sweat horribly. I just was drenched in sweat no matter what I did. And I thought, well, maybe it was menopause. I did not know. I saw different people, and it just seemed way over the top. And well, then that stopped. And then it took a few years before I realized a couple of years ago, wait a second, I'm not sweating at all anymore. So I had the complete opposite problem, just for no reason.
It's many times like a bipolar thing.
It was terrible. I couldn't figure it out. And sometimes, especially when it comes to sweating, you don't think, oh wait, I'm not sweating. because you just don't miss it. You don't notice that it's not there.
Right.
It's really not there.
So,
And
would you say that sweating is the parasympathetic taking over and the no sweat, or the other way?
it's a little bit complex because the sweating has mixtures of both.
Right.
So it's complex, and the same with the certain other things that that you need both for. But for example, the bladder, if one is dominant, you hold on to your bladder, and if the other one is dominant, I had problems holding my bladder control.
Like inconsistency?
Incontinence, yes.
Yeah,
I would
incontinence.
literally stand up and we just in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I would just wet myself, and for no reason. And then I got on treatment and that helped. But then as I got off the treatment, and I realized I almost had the opposite problem for a while. So it can really switch back and forth. So, and then I should have been more thoughtful about it, but one of my most nerve-wracking symptoms was in 2018, when I would get up in the morning to go to the bathroom, and I would get partway there and I would fall to the ground and pass out.
Oh,
And
like a low blood pressure? Was
and it wasn't, so I bought a machine because I did not know what was happening. So I bought a blood pressure machine, and I just kept it on as I laid there, and I had a good blood pressure laying down, and I stood up, and often I passed out, and the blood pressure machine said I didn't have any blood pressure for that time. So it was I knew something was wrong, and nobody seemed to know why. I thought it was pituitary gland. Well, it wasn't really. And so it just it wasn't something. It was one of those things where you had such a wide variety of things that I started having. Well, I saw a bladder doctor, and then they did a test of my stomach and found that it wasn't emptying. That's why I was losing weight, that I would eat food, but because my parasympathetic nervous system was not working in my gut, it would not move through. And so it was called gastroparesis. And I would choke too. I would have problems with this motility of my esophagus just not happening. Like I'd be very careful.
Is it something that is happening in the body, in the organs, or is it the interpretation of the brain?
It's most of the time it's in the brain, or the connection between the brain. There are people who literally have problems in the brain, like Parkinson's disease patients can have this.
Yes.
And of course, for them, it's very bad because there's no cure for it. And so those people do end up not making it. And there are other diseases such as pure autonomic failure, or PAF, where it is not curable, and you, at least as far as I know at this point.
How was your heart rate?
My heart rate would well, my personal heart rate was actually very slow. A lot of people who have dysautonomia have what's called POTS, POTT, POTS,
Yeah.
POTS. And their heart rate will go very high as they pass out.
Yes.
So, and that's a different thing, but it's also a dysautonomia. And so there is some kind of a disconnect between what your body needs to keep the blood pressure normal, and the brain sending the signal to do that.
So in your opinion, and after experience it yourself, what do you think is the root cause of this disconnection, like between the brain and the function of the organs, the tissues? And another question that I have for you is it also related in a way to autoimmune diseases? Can it affect?
Yes. And I would say that it's a split thing. There are a lot of autoimmune diseases out there, like Sjogren's syndrome.
Right.
There are some more rare ones that involve antibodies to parts of the connections between the brain. So I believe there are some dysautonomias that we do not yet know the answer to because we don't know the antibody causing the problem.
Oh,
Can't find it.
and
And others you can say, oh yes, it's this.
what is the trigger for these antibodies? Is it an infection?
It can be infection. There are a number of people will get this after a virus or some kind of illness.
Right.
Mine I did have an infection in 2011 that could have been the trigger, but I'm not sure of that at all. I'm not sure. And also in my case, no autoantibody has been found.
Did you
now,
do all the, and how was your inflammation biomarkers? Like,
they were good. My inflammation markers were very good. But unless someone's acutely inflamed with something, autoimmune diseases don't always show a lot of inflammation at the time.
That's right.
Because what happens is the antibody is already come and gone. It's done its job, and so nothing is on fire at the time. The fire is gone, but the after effects are still there.
But if the after effects are there, isn't there still inflammation? Like I'm asking about segmentation rate and.
Yes, no, often not. Often not. Even in people who have, a fair amount of autoimmune diseases, possibly at the time it's flaring up. Yes. But what you end up with after a while is, no, you don't get a high sedimentation rate. You don't get those markers that you need. But the antibodies are still there. So the task for a lot of these doctors is to figure out the antibodies. Now, I have a lot of theories about, well, maybe only one good theory about people such as myself who have never shown antibodies, autoimmune disease antibodies, or especially people who have POTS. A fair number of people that I have talked to who have POTS have some kind of trauma history in their background. Some kind of major trauma.
Emotional trauma or
emotional trauma, significant emotional trauma, either in their childhood or prior to that. And it's almost as though the brain has not yet figured out how to regulate itself again.
I see.
So POTS people, a lot of people with POTS are very anxious and very, it's almost as though their sympathetic connection to, their body senses a low blood pressure, and based on their brain chemistry, they send out way too much of a signal to their heart rate, but not enough to their blood pressure. It's like the wrong signals get sent, so their heart rate zooms up way past what it should.
Oh.
So, and in my case, I became aware that, really convinced that trauma was probably my situation as well.
Oh, I see. So you believe that emotional trauma was the root cause of the onset of this?
Yes, I do.
Was it recent to the onset?
No, it wasn't recent. But I had been doing a lot of therapy to really reconnect to my body. I just felt, because my trauma was so severe and is so much in my early developmental stage, I worked for decades to try to really reconnect to my body. And oddly, when I did, this happened. And it was almost as though like my body was trying to reconnect itself, but the electricity wasn't lined up the way it was supposed to. Like a bad electrician had somehow come in and connected my brain to my body.
So could it be that you re-traumatized yourself with all?
Yes, yes, exactly. I feel like that's almost what happened. Like as I really worked hard to, to regain this sense of really not having a body for so long.
Yes.
It just re-traumatized it. Because I can't really conceive of any other thing.
So there is wisdom in repression mechanisms that we use.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I think there is.
Like
I think there is.
they are so demonized, all these repression and suppression, that, and they say that all mental diseases stem from repressing emotions and refusing to feel. But sometimes when you let them float, they overwhelm you. They
Right, it does. I think it does. I think it does. And so it was really hard because at the point I finally just I myself put together that the autonomic nervous system was messed up. I was the only one among all the doctors that I saw that finally realized, wait a second, all these things are related to the same system. And I had practically every type of or symptom that you could have. So
yes. And how was
you know,
your breath? How did you breathe?
I had a lot of wheezing because of this. The bronchial tree is also under the effects of the autonomic nervous system. So things get opened up or they clamp down depending on what your autonomic system feels.
So do you remember a low point? How much time did all this last?
Well, I went through my lowest point was in 2020, 2 years ago, when I went to the Mayo Clinic, because I really thought, okay, the Mayo Clinic is going to save me. I will be there, world renowned. They will be able to do it. And I live in Minnesota, where they have the first Mayo Clinic.
Right.
So I went there. I had all of the tests. The tests showed that yes, I had dysautonomia. It showed I did not sweat really much at all. And then my GI tract had shut down, and it was like my body had given up. And this was in about February of 2020 that I finally got that sort of good luck with that. They couldn't find an antibody. They couldn't find a reason. So that meant there was really no cure.
So how did you feel? What happened when?
It was really horrible because I knew I was within just a few pounds of needing a feeding tube if I was going to survive. I had lost a 165 pounds. I was down to about 110, and I was starving to death. There was no way I could feed myself because
So was it also a turning point for you, this low point?
It was. It really was, because I walked away thinking, wait a second, the Mayo Clinic can't fix me. And now, and it almost seemed like I don't know, they just.
They are guessing. Sometimes many people feel that the doctors are clueless and they are guessing, they are trying, error and trial.
Right. And so for me, I just agree. I was like, wait a second, I refuse to die. I just refused. I thought there's no I just thought I thought to myself, okay, now if I can just keep a close eye on my body. And I started studying a lot of things like biofeedback.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I learned a special type of biofeedback that I actually kind of invented myself. That's based on heart rate variability. So it monitors.
Yeah.
And I studied heart rate variability.
How did you measure it? Did you take the pulse in breathing and in inhale and exhale? Like, did you?
Well, I started just measuring it. Because heart rate variability is so easy now for anybody to measure. You don't need fancy equipment anymore. It basically requires a clip that you put on your finger for 5 minutes every day.
Yes.
And you're supposed to do it roughly the same time of day. And I literally don't. They say do it as soon as you get up in the morning and follow your heart rate variability. So I started doing it and I thought, oh, this is terrible. And then I worked with the heart rate variability coach, who also was a neuroscientist and a nutritionist. And he said, okay, well, this is what we need to do. And he put me on a diet that seemed so off the wall. I thought, really? this isn't anything I was ever taught, and it's almost the opposite of what anyone would tell you a person with my problem should have.
What did he give you?
Well, it was mostly paleo, a paleo type diet. But there was a lot of like carrot juice and sauerkraut and
Fermented food, yes.
yes, and I really it didn't have a lot of milk, and I just kind of get the inflammatory food out of my system. And
Like
I started.
fruits
Well,
are forbidden, except
he
for
didn't.
berries, right?
Yes, right. And he wanted me to do things like avoid gluten for a while, even though I didn't have gluten
Yeah,
problems that anybody knew of, and which I did. He also had me on pancreatic enzymes to help the food I was eating be
yeah,
absorbed. And I started gaining weight, and
yes.
things improved. My GI tract improved. I I I
Wow.
stopped. I did not faint anymore.
It
And
sounds it sounds so counterintuitive because you were already losing weight, and
right.
and the paleo diet is shrinking you and more.
No, but it really wasn't. I was able to really because the food I was getting was finally being absorbed and taken in, and without the gastroparesis, I could eat more and because I knew the food would at least start to move through the way it was supposed to.
Was it also
So
based on fats, like fats from plant sources like avocados or macadamia nuts, things like
right,
this, or was it
yes.
just focused on meat?
No. The paleo part wasn't as much focused on meat as it was focused on not eating grains.
Right. This
So just kind of like skip the grains, skip the milk, and
grains and legumes too, right?
right, the things that evolutionarily we really weren't designed to absorb and use very well.
What
In
is
the
what
green
is your
world,
blood type?
be positive.
Ah, right. Yeah.
So I started that, and so yeah, it really did well. I even had to do things like, he was like, well, you don't need margarine, just eat butter, which really seemed horrible 'cause my cholesterol was high, but I did it. And ghee, I was eating ghee mostly, and
Mhm.
not just butter, but it was ghee. And my cholesterol came down, my heart numbers looked better, everything was
Actually,
better.
ghee is anti-inflammatory
Yes.
in a
I mean, the biggest
mysterious
problem is
way.
it's expensive, but I loved it. I thought it was great.
You can
So
prepare it yourself. It's very simple to prepare it at home.
yeah, I've learned that since, but at the time I was like, oh gosh, this is horrible. But so then I gradually was able to shift away from that, and I don't take the pancreatic enzymes anymore. I I don't really I don't follow the paleo diet anymore, but I still eat healthy. And for me, when I have kept track of my heart rate variability every single day since May of 2020. Every day I would
Can
set
you say
one.
more? Can you say more? Because you kind of invented the intuitive.
Biofeedback, yes.
And
There are
because I think it's a common notion now that the heart rate variability is an indicator to good health. The more it is
yes, it's an indicator of resilience. In
exactly of
other words, it's not going
adaptivity.
to right. It's not going to mean necessarily that you'll never get sick, but it can predict when you're getting sick and to tell you, wait a second, slow down. And it can really, if you can improve your heart rate variability, then you are more resilient to
So
disease.
how do you improve it?
Well, there are simple things like, stay hydrated, exercise, eat well, sleep enough, which I wasn't doing at all.
Mhm,
I could hardly, my sleep was horrible.
mhm.
And now it's normal. And for biofeedback, I use, especially when I am struggling, It is basically maybe 10 minutes or so at a time where I watch my heart rate variability on my phone, and then I breathe according to what my heart is telling me. So if my heart rate is increasing, I take a big breath, and then as I watch it peak, it drops. So I get these nice big waves of a really massive heart rate variability for just enough time that sort of trains things. I call it biointuitive because it doesn't guess at what you should be breathing. It watches this. I can look at the screen and it tells me you should be breathing this amount.
So actually you healed yourself with
Yes.
common sense and the understanding of the heart.
Right.
Does it work quickly? Once you train yourself to be very, that the heart rate would be very diverse.
Yes.
Does it,
Yes, because
does it affect the health quickly?
yes, it does. Because surprisingly, I've been able to pull out of a lot of things thinking, okay, this is my last effort. I'm going to try this. And it really does improve if I do it before I go to bed, I sleep better. And then it seems to improve my numbers for quite a long period of time. And I liken it to nothing more magical than maybe standing on the scale every morning. You know, standing on the scale every morning doesn't help you lose weight, but it's a barometer so that you can say, oh, wait a second, I shouldn't have eaten that yesterday because now look at my weight. And this is how my sister has had some problems with heart rate variability. And she found every time she drinks a glass of wine, her heart rate variability sucks the next day. So she, who drank a lot of wine before, doesn't drink any, and now is much more, her health has improved because now she has a barometer. So it's
are there any other modalities that help increase the HRV, like meditation, activation of the vagus nerve?
well, yes, there are certain modalities you can do, like if you and you can learn about them on YouTube and those kinds of things, where if you take a deep breath and swallow in the middle of it, you activate your vagus nerve.
While you are inhaling?
Yeah, you take a deep breath and you swallow and then you let it out. And so there are things you can do. But surprisingly, most people, unless they're very, very skilled at meditation, will be depressed to learn that they actually activate their sympathetic nervous system more than their parasympathetic. It takes years of practice.
Because I'll tell you why, I think.
I was impatient, so I just kind of did it a different way.
There are people to whom meditation would activate the sympathetic because they feel the dissonance between not being able to focus. And
that's why for me, that's why I like mine, because it doesn't sound like I'm really meditating, which I'm not. I'm using biofeedback of my heart and my breath to have a focus that for 5 or 10 minutes or however long I want to be, I can do it. And there are lots of HRV biofeedback mechanisms out there, and I've tried them all. And a lot of them sort of upset me because it's somebody talking to you saying, breathe in, breathe out. When I don't have to talk to anybody. My screen tells me exactly what to do. And I don't know, it just seems, it works. It's just,
wow.
And I've actually done scientific experiments. And that's for me, I decided that I was going to do my own experiment. Like I was going to try this. And if that didn't work, I was going to try that. So I ran experiment after experiment of what works, what doesn't. And I just decided I was going to be my own advocate. And if I needed some medicine, fine, but they weren't telling me I did. And I was going to use biofeedback and common sense. And
so
if
you take the diet changes and what you did with the biofeedback, which one of these have, in your opinion, now in hindsight, which one of these had more weight in your healing?
I was very happy to use the dietary changes in the beginning. I was very happy because I felt like I sort of had a focus and I could do something that nobody was telling me I could do. And it took me a while for my own learning curve to catch up to the rest of it. And now that I have a better learning curve and a better sense of my body, I don't need the dietary changes as much. And so I use other things.
Okay.
And
So
I just have decided I'm going to be active and hike and get out there, and all that has paid off.
and now do you feel that the connection between the brain and the organs, the tissues, has been reestablished, that it has
Only thing I don't do yet is sweat. That's it. That's the only thing I don't do. Everything else is fine.
yeah,
So
but if you do a vigorous workout, you don't sweat either?
no, it annoys a lot of people around me because they're all sweating, and I'm like, oh no. So I have to be careful about being outside in the heat, and just keep water with me and be prepared to drench myself if I need to.
I didn't know that hydration is connected to HRV.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Hydration.
And most people are walking dehydrated without even
Well,
knowing.
I used to be, and now I literally have 2 of these, and it measures every day how much I drank, and I literally keep a religious, and I never used to even care, and who knows what I drank, but now I really do.
You know, sometimes the simple advices like drink more, sleep earlier, eat better are the best for.
It really, yes, so much so. And I think, everybody has their own motivator. Sometimes it is really easy to say, well, and I talk to people, the people who I coach and look to do some of their own health things. I often say, just pick one thing. What's your focus? Because I let them be their own experimenter. So that if they say, well, I'm going to choose to drink this much, whatever, and now I'm going to follow my heart rate variability, then in say a week's or a month's time, look at it, and now you have seen yourself, not someone that said, oh, here, go ahead and do this. You can see yourself, what you have done. So when you put yourself in the driver's seat, and I think people, I mean, you should have faith in doctors, to some extent. But I think you have to approach it as you are one of the team. If I see a doctor that does not respect me as a team member, I will not see them. And I want to be my own advocate. I want to ask, why are you doing this? What's the rationale? What if I don't do this? So really, I try to have, even people who aren't educated can be their own advocate.
Sure,
and not just take something without knowing why they're taking it or what it's for, or to really they're with themselves forever, 24/7. So if there's something that you notice, you just have to pay attention to yourself just as much.
I am curious, Christine, because you mentioned the emotional trauma. I think it is an enigma to many people that they had something, maybe an episode, a traumatic episode in their childhood, or sometimes it lingered and it is trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma that lingered. And to be honest, life is in itself a big trauma. By living, we are exposed to adversities. But why, in your opinion, the outburst of the malady happens? Like people had traumas and they repress them and they live happy, normal life, healthy life, and then out of the blue, something is exploding. What is happening there? Sometimes it can take 50 years.
I think those people who advocate the concept of the body keeps the score are correct. That you can float around just fine, as I did, because I got a medical degree and everything. I did not really fall apart until afterward. So you can move and move and move, but at some point, it's still there. It is still there, and it's I feel really passionate about I feel I think repression is really great, but I also see people who live out what I call trauma scripts, where they behave as though they're still in the trauma and they don't know why. They haven't really figured out, oh, well, I'm behaving this way because this is what happened to me as a child, and so now I'm treating everyone in that way. They haven't thought it out in a real clear way, and it takes a long time. It's taken me forever.
So how much time have you been with the dysautonomia symptoms? How?
A total of 8 years.
Oh my God. So since 2012 to 2020?
Somewhere in that range, yes. It was probably, I'm guessing somewhere in the range of 2012, 2013 is when it started. And it wasn't.
Were there times that you lost hope and believed that?
I think there were times where I really could have lost hope, because especially when I talked to people and I read things about dysautonomia where people said, oh, well, you know, your life expectancy is 5 years, or, you know, most people don't live past, you know, a certain point. And I thought, wait, no, I'm not ready for that. So, but it was depressing. And I just kind of thought, oh, I don't know. Those things were upsetting, but I didn't lose hope, only because I felt, I don't know. I don't know. I wanted to live. And I just thought, I'm just going to keep doing it and trying to find a way. And if something in my body was messed up, I just felt like I knew the mind-body connection was there somewhere. And even though it was messed up, it was there, and it was my mind and my body. And somehow, I didn't know how, because there was nothing out there that told me how to do this. Somehow it was going to connect.
This is very empowering. Your story is so inspiring. So after you have been with it 8 years, and when you started the HRV monitoring and biofeedbacking with it intuitively, biointuitive, as you call it, how soon did you notice a change? And what was the change, was the turning point radical at once, or was it gradual?
Well, as soon as I started my healing journey, I journaled a paragraph every single day. I have not skipped a day. I have a whole entire journal of like 60 pages that tells me every day how much I weighed, what I did that day. I started measuring blood pressure. Anything I could write down and measure, I followed, so I can look back and see my journey, literally. So that helps me to look back, because it gave me a focus of, okay, what am I going to write about today? I'm going to write about my weight. I might say, you know, I had a hard day with my GI tract, but I was stressed today. And sometimes I look back and say, oh yeah, that makes sense. So, you know, it was really, it takes me maybe 5 minutes a day to do it.
So how soon did you notice a change in the direction for healing?
I started in May, and I noticed I was improving by about June. No, wow. July. The end of June, first part of July, it was striking to see the change. And then the weight really over time has just improved, and now it's been stable and normal. And
so you know, many issues like this, you know, all these syndromes, fibromyalgia, which or things around these spots,
yes,
chronic fatigue.
Chronic fatigue, absolutely, that's right.
things that you cannot pinpoint what is wrong with that person. So they give it the name of a syndrome. So I wanted to ask you, so the common knowledge now is that if you strengthen your parasympathetic branch, then you will heal, because it will because healing happens when the vagus nerve is activated, when you have a very strong parasympathetic.
It's when your body senses it's okay. If your body still feels like it's fighting the world, whether it's real or imagined, you're not going to heal.
So how did you cultivate a sense of safety?
Biofeedback, for me, it really was, it was creating a safe space for myself, taking time, and recognizing my own strength, because a lot of times safety comes when you don't feel strong and everyone around you feels stronger and more powerful than you. And so I know a lot of people turn to their faith and all that, and I'm not saying I didn't, but I often will say, well, that's good, but what are you doing for yourself? Where's your power? And I just feel that starts to become you feel safer when you're just not worried about your own safety in the world.
So what would you say the role of language, the words that we say to ourselves, the inner self-talk, and the language that we use outside, does it have a role in the healing process?
Absolutely.
So
people who spend a lot of time worrying about I'm a burden to others, or becoming resigned, not. I do really think that I have a friend who was in trouble, and I just wrote down on a sticky sheet. I said, today I am going to do blank for myself. And I said, put this on your mirror. It was just really, I just wanted that, that one day, each day, look up and see, where is my own empowerment here? Even if it's something little. And, I just feel like those little things gradually over time, we'll all have to face our own demise at some point, but I've witnessed too many situations where you tell someone, well, you have such and such disease, and they die so fast from it. And I'm like, well, wait, no. And I could see that sort of like, oh, I'm going to die. And they just forget. They don't even, they're done. And so
yes, the resignation.
They're resigned. They don't think, they no longer think about joy. They no longer think about curiosity. They no longer think about they become their disease. And I just felt like, no, I'm not. So wow. I don't know. Maybe I'm angrier than most, but I just felt angry that people said I wasn't going to make it. And I just said, I'm not, no.
Maybe this is it, because you were in touch with your anger and you didn't repress the heat. And
yeah, right. I felt like I had, especially since I had something, and I talk to people all the time. I said, it's not mind over matter, but your mind matters. Your mind matters. What you say to yourself, how much self-empowerment you feel, all of that together, I think really does add to you being your own advocate and really deciding.
Do you think that it creates chemicals in the brain when you talk in a certain way?
Yes.
Yes. Does it have a biological, physiological mechanism behind it?
Yes, it does. It does. It reinforces chemicals that, the brain is difficult to test for chemicals, but there is something to be said for how even the subjective sense of feeling, if you choose 10 words that are happy words and you say those 10 words every day when you get up in the morning, and then you choose 10 sad words and you choose that, it sets the tone. And then you start to do different things in your life and you start to feel differently. And so, you know, I spent half my life on antidepressants,
Oh,
except I wasn't depressed. I was just sad. But now I'm not, and I'm not taking anything ever.
wow, I'm
So
so happy for you. That's
yeah.
such a good. And last two questions. How is the some people, you mentioned people who lose joy and curiosity and they resign and they just succumb to the mortality and we die anyway, so why bother? This state of mind. And there are people like you who believe that healing can be done. So, you know, there is a book about the power of belief.
Mhm.
I think it was by Bruce Lipton. But I'm asking you, Christine, what is the power of belief in our ability to heal? And do you think
Huge.
we can heal almost of anything?
It's huge. I am certain we cannot cure ourselves of everything. However, we have underestimated our own ability to believe. It's almost as though we've gotten into the state where now we have modern medicine and all of these things, and we've forgotten that they might let us down. You know, that modern medicine might not have an answer, or really not know. And so the power of belief is gigantic, and it really does set the stage for what you can do for your immune system, what you can do to heal things that are almost impossible to
But,
imagine in the
but what
beginning.
if someone has a very rational, analytical, skeptical mind, which is, you know, aligned with science, with what
Mhm.
would you tell such a person who has more inclination to be doubtful?
I am aligned with science.
I know.
I've always been aligned with science. I always said, well, I'm a scientist,
You are.
but I'm also aware of the fact that science itself has cut off especially medical science, has cut off a very important tool that isn't utilized, and that is belief, and that is empowerment, and that is hope. They just have forgotten that's a piece of it.
Mhm. And last question, what would you say, what would be your advice to a chronic, someone who is a chronic pain sufferer or someone who suffers of a chronic disease? And by the
Well,
way, dysautonomia, is it involved with pain?
yes, it can be very, very much so, depending on the situation. There are certain pain diseases that affect the circulation to your hands and whatever, and it's very painful.
Like
Um,
Raynaud's disease?
Raynaud's, yes, and I do have a touch of that, but I find it just more amusing than anything. It's painful at times, but I know it's not going to hurt me, so I don't worry too much about it. And I also do have chronic pain. I'm working with pain specialists right now because I have a spinal disease that I inherited from my father, that he died at 4 years older than I am, and his brother died also in his 60s. And when I
Oh,
realized I had it, I said to myself, well, I'm not going to die. And so, and I started thinking about what is it that causes people to die? And it has a lot to do with, well, I'm dying. I think I'm just going to sit here and rest. And I was like, well, okay, if I'm in pain and I move, I don't have as much pain. So sometimes it's just, I mean, there are certain diseases that, yes, you have to rest, but a lot of them, you find that fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, if you just get out there, even in the smallest way possible, it improves your mood, it improves all your mood chemicals, and then your perception of pain is far, far less. So really, two things I would recommend. One is always read so that you know what you have.
Educate yourself.
Be educated. You are the only one who will be able to say, oh, well, wait a second, I know I'm allergic to this, or wait a second. You just be educated and know your history and know the disease you have. It's not too hard these days to be educated. And the other thing is really, if someone tells you there is no hope, ask, well, why not? Why not? Because there is, If someone said I was going to die tomorrow, I'm like, gosh, I'm going to have the best day today then. It's all perspective.
So now, after just by saying that, I cannot hold myself and ask you, what is the weight of living in the present moment in healing? How does it contribute to healing? Because many people in the mind-body realm advise to take it day by day, one step at a time. Don't think about the future too much. The broken wheelchair scenarios. Don't think about the past. Just immerse yourself in the here and now, in this very moment. What's your take?
For sure. My take on, I agree with some of it, but not all of it. I think if you have a dream or a wish, even no matter how big it is, if I have a gigantic thing I want to do, I can easily be overwhelmed and say, oh, this is too much. But if I break it down into little pieces and say, well, today I can do this and tomorrow I can do that, and then a few weeks down or months or how long it takes, I can look back and say, how did I do that? I did live in the moment, but I had a journey to go to. I didn't just sort of say, okay, I'm going to lay on the deck here and just hang out. My living in the moment is living in this moment, knowing that there are other moments yet to come.
You seem like a very well-balanced human being with lots of common sense, with lots of sensibility and sensitivity for sure, but also sensibility. Good for you.
Thank you. No, I do. I think it helps. And I think even people who aren't well educated and whatever can at least turn to people who are, to teach them what they need to know.
Yeah.
And just to use it.
You're right.
It's the learning experience, and we don't have all the answers yet in medicine. We don't. That would be silly to think we do. So in that case, it's all a work in progress.
Christina, I could spend the whole night talking to you. It's so inspiring and empowering to listen to such a story and the human spirit, which is so strong. This is why I agree with you that education is less important than cultivating the spirit of, yes, I can. Yes, we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wish you all the best, lots of health and joy in the
thank you so much.
of the moments to come. Thank you.
Good luck on your project.